sitting comfortably. So what I'm going to do is just disrupt that by getting everybody to stand up. Great stuff. We're all standing. So I want you to imagine your all-time favourite performer, alive or dead, just the person you most want to see live on the stage. And I want you to imagine that today is the day you're going to actually get to see them live. I want you to imagine the energy that, oh my God, they're going to be here and they're going to play for you. But to make that happen, you have got to give the biggest, loudest round of applause you possibly can. So I'm going to give you a count, and when I get to 3, I want to hear it, okay? So they're in the backstage, they're listening, they're waiting, and they want to hear it. 1, 2, 3, let's hear you. They're like, we're not coming on for that. It's not a thing. So I'm going to give you one last chance. This is your last chance. 1, 2, 3, go! I just want to make sure that if I have a shit end to today, I've got a standing ovation. Feel free to sit down and relax. Thank you. You didn't get them, but you got me. You got me. So I'm delighted to be here today. It's amazing just to see all your faces. I know a lot of people here. I've heard many of you speaking, and the speakers this morning have been amazing. So I'm like, basically, if I was just to say what they said, is that okay? It's already brilliant. So for those of you that don't know me, I just want to introduce myself. My name is Brennan. I'm an occupational therapist. I'm a mental fitness specialist, and I'm an accidental entrepreneur. I never meant to be in business, but here I am. And I, Richard Tubb, would you be my helpful assistant and pass me my mental fitness kit bag?
Yeah.
So I've just brought myself today, and I've brought my mental fitness kit bag, and I'm going to unpack it while we talk. So this is a metaphor, it's not a real, it's a kit bag, and I carry it about everywhere I go. So if you see me normally, you'll see that I wear my kit bag a lot, and I usually have a baseball cap on too. But since Trump started being really evil, I just can't bring myself to wear the red cap so much these days. It just doesn't land well with me. But I brought myself my kit bag, and I want to tell you a little bit about me. And I want to tell you a little bit about the entrepreneur's adventure. And I want to talk about SOS to SAS. And I want to talk about why we need to pack our mental fitness kit bag. So, I think that pivotal moments and powerful moments in business aren't always the big scale up and the big exciting moments. Sometimes it's how we turn breakdown moments into breakthrough adventures. I spent 20 years working for the NHS and specialising in mental health, and 20 years into my career, I realised that something wasn't feeling okay for me. I spent lots of time with people who developed really severe and enduring mental illnesses. And I would always ask, because we're all just people at the end of the day, and I'd ask people, what was the moment where an adversity became an illness? When did you tip into illness? And usually when people told me their stories, it was the biggest heart-sinking moment for me, because it was the realisation that if those people had had the scaffold of a community and the right support, if they'd had the right people around them to teach them the strategies they needed, it could have been their biggest pivotal moment from adversity into resilience. And this really drove me towards developing a business that would help me catch people upstream, people like you and I that would face an adversity but could turn that around and make it a moment where they could learn really valuable lessons about themselves and go on to not just survive but really thrive. And not just thrive, but to kick the arse out of life, because hey, isn't that what we all want? So I launched Adventurous Coaching, and that was 10 years ago, so I've actually just celebrated 10 years in business. So it's been really and that for me has been very exciting, because I'm still scratching my head and thinking, how did that happen? And also that kind of wondering if I'll get found out for not really knowing everything I should about business, but I'm doing it all the same. And I guess what I really wanted to do was to turn the idea about dealing with your mental health into an adventure that we can all experience, not being as a painful, hard, horrible thing, but as something that would be growth related and interesting and creative as well. And so hence my business evolved and developed from that. And I remember myself turning up my first ever networking event and somebody asking what I did and saying, well, I just, and then realising that I would really needed to learn to talk about what I do in a way that people would best understand. So there I was pivoting and working between two roles really at the same time. I was, developing an NHS service, working in a psychiatric unit with males with psychosis, and I was developing my business at the same time and growing that and getting to know people, learning and absorbing from all the kind and generous and experts in the Northeast who really know a lot about business. And then there was that thing that happened, and we've all alluded to and talked about, the pandemic. But what I've learned about myself over the years is that when adversity hits, I really do innovate. So it's where I kind of really shift gear and get in the sleep. And so when most people were locking down, I was stepping up because my role didn't allow me to be at home. I had to be in work. And the structure of that really, really helped me. I had purpose and structure and routine and connection, and I had an opportunity in both of those roles to really innovate. So on the board that I was working on, I had a captive audience of young guys who couldn't go off and do other things, and I took absolute advantage of it. And what we had happening on the board at that time was we had a bike, we set up a bike program. So we had them guys that would be lying in bed most of the day, really struggling, out on bikes, exploring the area around where we lived, learning about their physical resilience. And as we know, everything is translatable to different contexts, so they were really learning about their resilience and their potential for recovery. The other thing that I say we, it's me, this is what I did, was I set up a music studio. We popped up a music studio on the ward, and we had them learning to write lyrics. So they were writing music, and they were learning how to play instruments. So what they didn't realise was that if you can write lyrics for songs, you're doing literacy work, and if you can count beats, you're doing numeracy. So secretly, we were doing pre-vocational work and not telling them because they were having fun. The third thing that we did was we popped up a shop, because if you can't go to the shop, then we just bring entrepreneurship into the setting we're in, and they had to get up and work. They wanted the shop, they had to get up and work. So they were learning a lot of skills, and I was having a lot of fun helping them. And although it was recovery with an adventurous streak. But meanwhile, I was also innovating within Adventurous Coaching because people needed help. We all needed some kind of help. We were all adjusting and adapting. And I had the opportunity to work online like a lot of people did. We developed that. And I had the opportunity to make it fun. So creating poly prescriptions for people that were struggling with different challenges. The mental fitness Kitbag evolved, and we started to talk more about what kit is in your tool bag, and I developed a coaching system too. So that's great, but actually sometimes innovation and overfunctioning are quite closely connected, and there's a fine line, isn't there? And what I discovered about a year after the pandemic, there was an irony to it, because I was being interviewed on radio about burnout. It might have been you, Alfie, Joey, might not. I was being interviewed on radio about burnout, and it was that light bulb moment where I realised that I was absolutely in SOS mode. I was describing myself. I was absolutely exhausted and in burnout, and it was a really big moment for me of discovering that, you know, like everybody else, we've all got breaking points, and this is where you have to do the work on yourself. So, Kitbag's getting opened. Things are coming out. I think John will.
Oh yeah.
You're not allowed to use it yet.
Yeah,
I'll tell you when. I'll tell you when. So anyway, here we are. So, you know, this is how my life felt at that moment. It was the moment of absolute disruption where nothing was clear anymore, and I realised I was absolutely caught in a storm. And it was that first moment of discovering that I had some options about what to do next. Because often when we're in a storm, nothing's clear and there's chaos. But actually in those moments, great things can happen too. So, if you imagine yourself in a storm with no map, but just your own grit and determination and experience, I think that maybe this is where a lot of us were when COVID was happening, wasn't it? But so there was me, and I had two choices. Let me see if I can get this to work. SOS, which is where I felt I was sitting. The struggle of how I was feeling, and the overwhelm, fatigue, and stress. And any of us can reach that point. And realising that I had two choices, I could stay in that space, or I could create a different narrative, and that narrative would create a whole different bunch of opportunities, and take myself to SAS, which is where we all want to be, whether it's about our physical health or our mental health. You want to be in that space where you know you've got it. And it's not a thing that happens by accident. So we talked a lot about like changing the story, changing the narrative, and you beautifully described all that, so it's lovely you did that for me. And we know that when it comes to changing your language, and we know that when it comes to changing your mind, we don't mindset, we mind flex, don't we? We flex. And there's a beautiful science around this. Neuroscience teaches us that neuroplasticity is something, a beautiful thing that our brains can do that helps us change the way we're thinking, which can change the way we're feeling, the stories we tell, and the actions we take. And so I heard myself saying, oh my God, what am I going to do? This is terrible. Maybe I'm going to fail. Maybe I'm going to fall on my face. And we hear this all the time. So if you think about your language, gosh, if you're in business, maybe you're just thinking about starting up, or maybe you've just started up, or maybe you're like ready to kind of take things to the next level. And there's always that part of our brain going, shit, what if I fall? What if I fall flat on my face? What if I have a setback? Or we can change that again. We do the work on our brain to think, well, what could I tell myself instead? And so what I was trying to tell myself at that moment is, what if this goes really well? What if I help myself in the same way I help other people, to turn my fall flat on my face moment to a standing up and bouncing forward. And we know that when it comes to resilience, resilience or a struggle that we might face is not about avoiding the struggles, it's about what we do with the struggles. So a different narrative, and if I can do this, you can. So if you're thinking about your business, you might be going, oh, I wonder if I can make this work. It's actually, how can I make this work? How can I make this succeed? How can I make this possible? And actually, what if what I'm about to do becomes an amazing adventure? So I'm going to talk about the SOS, so struggles, overwhelm and stress, strengths, action and success. So, you're like, when can I ready? One of my favourite things in my mental fitness kit bag is my compass. It's just something I love. I take it everywhere I go. And Richard, I know that you have your compass. Richard has his compass on his work desk as a reminder that I think often in what we have to do is check in with where we're at and check where we want to be. So I think every adventure begins with a compass check-in. Whether you're climbing Everest, whether you're starting out, whether you're scaling up, it absolutely makes sense strategically to stop and assess where we're at. Just stopping and taking that time to think. And Jane talked beautifully about that, time to connect and reflect. So stopping regularly and having check-ins, get your metaphorical compass out and think, where am I at now? where do I want to be? What setbacks might be around for me? What struggles might I face? And actually, what strengths have I got that could support me along the way? And thriving through the struggles where all great stuff happens is where the good stories are, and it's where we learn. And I really believe that adventure can actually be your compass along the way. I want to ask you a question. Well, actually, can everybody just raise a hand for me? So, keep your hand up if you feel really clear what your strengths are. You just know what you're good at. Know what you're good at. So there's quite a lot of hands still up, which is great. That's brilliant. I'm curious now about, I'm wondering, keep your hands in. I just wanted to see there's actually really, the majority of people get their hands up. I'm wondering where people discovered what their strengths are, and I'm going to guess it was either because you've experienced something like you've had to set a challenge and then you've succeeded and you've got great feedback from that because you've worked out what you're good at through winning. Or I'm guessing that maybe somebody's given you really good developmental feedback. Feedback given well is really, really helpful. Or I'm guessing that you just naturally know what you're good at. Or maybe you've used like a profiling tool that kind of focuses in on strengths. I use a tool called IT profiling, and I love it because it's like getting a magnifying glass out, QG. Getting the magnifying glass out and really putting under the radar and paying more attention and really magnifying what we're good at, which is something that we don't do enough. But remember that whenever you're facing a challenge, your strengths are something you can use to leverage you along the way. I just want to share a wee story because in the work that I do with CEOs and business owners and leaders, often find that what happens is we find that the focus on doing more can sometimes get in the way of that focus on what we're doing well. And I was working with a really frazzled team who were absolutely overperforming and overfunctioning, working really, really hard, but everybody was exhausted, tired, and actually productivity was high, but satisfaction was really low. Everybody was knackered and nobody wanted to be at work. But all I could see was that there was lots of success and lots of wins happening. So what we focused on doing, what I supported the team to do, is a very simple thing, and I want you to remember this because we need to all be doing this, is sometimes when we're focused on that doing more mindset, we forget to focus in on noticing where we're winning and successfully split, right? So I used the IT profiling tool with the whole team, so that everybody in the team started to pay much more attention to what they individually brought to the table. And I encouraged the team to celebrate their successes. It's a really simple thing, but little things like having a weekly check-in, literally cue the pom-poms, getting the pom-poms out. I knew you'd be good at that, you guys. You're really good at that. But really encouraging people to stop with the focusing on performance and more focusing on stopping and just as a team together paying much more attention to where they were winning. And what we discovered was that when everybody knew their strengths and everybody knew where they could support each other, and when we stopped, people were stopping in that team and spending less time in the to-do list and more time in the ta-da, and the more celebrations of where things were going well. Productivity didn't drop, but satisfaction improved. People were connecting better and collaborating better and supporting each other as well. And also I just want to point out and mention the gap in the game, which is that sometimes we're so driven towards having to focus on the big goal and where we're headed that it's really easy to forget to look in the rearview mirror and think about the gap between where we were and where we are now, because we've done the work to get to that point. So I'm just wanting to remind you to think more about that, the gap in the game. Where have you been that's got you to where you're at? And what strengths do you have that could help you with a challenge you might be facing right now? So, overwhelm to action. So, it's easy to think we've got to wait for the perfect conditions. And if I had done that, I would never ever have started my business. I'm actually a recovering perfectionist. Is there anybody else? Yeah, I'm a recovered perfectionist. It's not a thing. It's not a thing. We know that, don't we, right? But we still kind of strive for it for ourselves, but not so much for others. We're kind to other people, but we kind of want to do our best, and we're critical of ourselves when we don't. But adventurers don't wait for the perfect conditions to start. They start where they're at. So I want to tell you a story that I'll call Adapt, Improvise, Overcome, because it was a piece of work I was doing. I was commissioned to run a mental fitness retreat for military veterans. And this retreat was going to happen in France, of all places. And we were en route to have this 5-day retreat in France with 8 female military veterans who'd all experienced some level of trauma in their field work that had resonated with them in their day-to-day lives. And I was really excited about the opportunity to take a road trip with an awesome bunch of women, and I was going to support them along the way. I was very, very excited about that. But along the way, I just want to tell you something that happened. So along the way, imagine the scene. It's bank holiday. It's Easter Sunday, actually. It's Easter Sunday. And I ended up driving the minibus and being in charge of the whole event and delivering. And what happened half an hour before we needed to get to the ferry port was the van broke down. And we were stuck at 11 p.m. on Easter Sunday on the side of the road with 8 people that were exhausted and really excited about the ferry trip we were about to take to Dieppe en route to central France. And we had all sorts of adventures planned. So we were faced with a situation where we had to decide what to do very quickly. It became apparent there was no transport options. Our transport could not be fixed. So we were rootless and without transport. We had nowhere to stay and nowhere to get to. So very quickly, get the clappers out there, because it was like a scene from a movie. We had to get into, I'd like you to do that very dramatically.
Oh, of course.
And action. I like that. But it was like a scene from a movie. We had to all of a sudden shift from, we've got this lovely plan, to there's no plan. The bad news is there's nowhere to stay tonight. We've got no transport, and everything is uncertain. There's no certainty here at all. We needed to get into action mode really quickly. And I'm not going to lie, it was overwhelming. And do you know the thing about overwhelm? It's really overwhelming. And I guess we all of a sudden, we became in this experience together. We all had to work together. We did find accommodation that night. We had problems with Wi-Fi. We had to make decisions like, do we just pivot and go home? Is it game over now? Or can we actually do this? Can we go forward? And to do that, we had to pull together as a team, and we had to understand what everybody in this group of collection of women could do, what strengths and skills we had, and how we could actually work together to create a solution. So we made a decision to get on the ferry to France with no destination and no transportation to get there. And we made friends with the captain on that ship, and we were in his cabin on the Wi-Fi trying to find accommodation. We booked accommodation, brilliant solution found, and then we realised that it was bank holiday, nobody had responded. So we'd taken our money, but we had no accommodation. Operation fail, and so on and so forth. But the outcome of that story was that we found an absolutely gorgeous location in Dieppe. So once we came off the ferry, this was now our new destination. We're going to walk everywhere. We're going to cook outdoors. We've got somewhere to stay. We've got a place to coach by the river. We've got 5 days of activities. We're going to improvise. We're going to work together, and we're going to create a really beautiful event that, guess what? We created it together. We had to use all of our strengths to do this, and all of our brain power, and it was an absolute success. It was almost like if you could have almost sort of created a scenario to feel like an adventure just as part of the event, this would have been it, but it was real life, thinking on the spot stuff. So along the way, I guess what we learned was that, when it comes to taking action, the power of the team is key. We know this. So you might be a solopreneur, but you might want to remember that there's a whole bunch of people around you with skill sets that you don't have that can help you. Comfort zones, so it was really uncomfortable, but I guess we had to find courage over comfort, to decide together that we were going to move forward, and everybody had their own challenges with that experience, and we all had to work through it. The girl who was supposed to be there to support me with that event was having a panic attack, so whilst I was supporting the kind of action forward, I was trying to take her aside and get her to put her head between her legs and do the breath work, and not let the military veterans see that there was a thing going on here. We had so we were brave and scared at the same time. We were all in it together, and that's the reality of being human, isn't it? And we had to adopt an adventurous approach to make that happen. So remember that, and I want to ask you, is there something that you perhaps maybe feel a bit overwhelmed about, or something that you want to take action on with your business or with your life that you haven't kind of found a way forward yet, that perhaps just to take a wee moment to think, is there a small step I could take? We don't have to find all the answers, and we don't have to get to the end goal, but is there a small step you could take towards something that's maybe causing some overwhelm, but you want to activate on? And if you can bring something to your mind, I would also like to say to you, can you just think about the minimum viable commitment that you could make to that? Like, if your life depended upon it, is there one tiny thing that you could do that would just take you one step forward with that? So I'd like you to hold on to that. And then the final one. So this is about stress to success. You beautifully talked everybody's stories of shared moments of stress and difficult times. And I guess what we need to remember, and you know, we talked about this morning, is that stress needs to become our companion on this journey in entrepreneurship. Whether we're pivoting or whether we're heading forward, we need to welcome stress in and use it and leverage it as a tool and as fuel, because it can actually help us to create the success we really want. But to do that, we also need the strategies to make sure that stress isn't the fuel for burnout, it's the fuel for success, the success we want. I created, I actually conducted some research after the pandemic, and I looked at, of all the hundreds of people that had come to me for support over the years, I started to map out what struggles they faced, what stresses they experienced, and at what points they had hit SOS. And using all my knowledge, expertise, and the tools in my kit bag, I started to map it out. And if you really want to get clear on understanding what problems you're trying to solve in your business, hire Anne English. Because what Anne English does is, yeah, right, Anne English, Brennan applause for Anne. Because what Anne did was she took out of my brain all the knowledge and information I had of what people struggled with in SOS, what strategies I had adopted and learned and mastered, what tools I developed that could help people, and she helped me build that into a whole program. And downstairs in the foyer, if you see my banner, just look at it, it's a wheel, and I saw your wheel too. And wheels matter to me, because wheels are like, it's like my compass. But it's also like the wheel is like the wheel of a bike, and I'm a fanatical cyclist and triathlete too, so I get excited by wheels. But take a look at it, and it'll show you the different kind of waypoints at which people tend to come for support around their mental health and their mental fitness, where things can be overcome, tools can be adopted, we can all develop and strengthen ourselves around that. So, you know, I would love to tell you more about it, but I'm not going to, because I'm watching the clock and it's nearly lunchtime. So the elephant in the room is it's nearly lunchtime and we're all starving. So what I just want to say to you is those 3 waypoints of that coaching system I just want to mention briefly. And one is the stories we tell ourselves. So I have a module in my program which is about like changing narratives, you know, that work that we can do to develop the conversations we want to have, and the conversations with ourselves stories that will influence what we think and what we feel and how we behave and the actions we know we can take. And words have power, our words have got power. Anne talked about this on Monday in her talk. She said, what about when we think about that big dream and then we go, but, and instead she said, we need to say, because. I use the word but and I change it often to and. I would like to have that. And I hear myself going to say but and I say and. And I talked to someone this morning about business and I said, what do you do? And they said, I just. And I said, no. So we've got to think about our words carefully. You know, that whole how can I succeed becomes how can I succeed? And what if this became the big adventure I wanted it to be? Journeys, you know, we're all on journeys. We saw lots of beautiful journeys along the way that people have been on in their businesses. And journeys are important, but I guess what I want to say about journeys is it's good to know where we want to go and where we're going to head next. So our compass can help us along the way. Road maps are beautiful things to take us to where we want to be. But also think about, don't forget to look in your rearview mirror, because there's a lot of valuable knowledge in remembering how far you've come and what you've learned along the way that helped you get there, because success leaves clues and it can help you going forward. And finally, I just want to mention something about the team. As soon as I thought about this, I thought about Paul Lancaster, because connection and community is key to your mental fitness and my mental fitness and our ability to thrive in our entrepreneurship and to stay out of SOS. Because community builds scaffolds around us and it helps us go forward. And I just want to remind you that at any point in your journey, if you've not got the right people supporting you, you can fire, retire, and hire people around you to constantly making sure you've got the right team of people helping you at any time, and that part's crucial. And one of the things I love about what Paul does is he scaffolds us and he creates spaces for us to meet and build genuine connections. And for that I am very grateful, and I know you all are too. So a round of applause to So kind of where you're at and where you're headed next. Whether you're moving forward, you don't have to navigate the journey alone, because you've got me. You've got the map. We've got the compass. We've got the Kitbag. And you can talk to me about how I can help you if you're interested. But just to say, there are 3 ways that I help people. And one of those is one-to-one coaching. So I've done lots of work with CEOs and business owners and their teams as well, which I absolutely adore. Join the club. So I've just launched an adventure club, the Adventure Club. So we've got lots of synergy around outdoors and action, and it's a space for busy entrepreneurs that want their real life to look as good as their CV and to have more fun, and to use outdoor spaces to connect with people that will encourage them to continue the adventure. And I took my lovely coaching system that Anne helped me build, and it became a program, and I developed it into an on-demand course. So I have a course that you can access to. And the last thing I want to say to you is, if you could get your phones out, my big ask is, if you could get your phones out, and if I could ask you to do something. Oh, there it is. Sorry. I'd love to connect with you, and so my ask is, would you connect with me on LinkedIn? And if you do, if you connect with me and say hi, I'll send you a poly prescription for your adventure and entrepreneurship going forward. And what my ask is just to say simply, the adventure starts here, so let's do this. And it's now time for lunch.
Well, you've all been amazing speakers, so thank you again everyone for doing that. We are going to break for lunch.